He can never know why. Ryan Whitmore's voice reached Evan Brooks through the half-open dining room door, quiet enough to sound private and clear enough to stop him in the hallway. The words were Spanish, spoken with the effortless confidence of someone certain the person outside could not understand them. Evan's hand remained on the brass door handle. For nearly a year, Ryan, Blake, and Carter had assumed his Spanish ended somewhere around restaurant menus and polite greetings. Evan had never corrected them. Growing up with a bilingual grandmother had given him something far more useful than conversational Spanish, the ability to understand every careful word being spoken 10 feet away. "The statement has to be ready before midnight," Carter said in Spanish. His tone carried the measured calm he used whenever a problem had been reduced to numbers. Blake answered immediately. Then changed the statement. "I am not signing something that makes Evan look disposable." Evan's fingers tightened around the handle. Statement. Midnight. His name. Ryan spoke next. "This is not about what it looks like to us. It is about what happens when the story reaches the press. And when Evan discovers what we did." Blake asked. Silence lasted 2 seconds too long. "Then he can hate us," Ryan said. "But he stays out of it." Evan felt something cold settle beneath his ribs. 3 hours earlier, Ryan had texted him asking whether 7:30 worked for dinner at the private executive suite of Whitmore Holdings. Nothing about the message had sounded unusual. Evan had spent the afternoon reviewing redevelopment projections, taken the subway downtown, and walked the final 3 blocks through December wind believing he was arriving for an ordinary evening with the 3 men he trusted most. Now they were discussing how to remove him from something he did not even know existed. Evan pushed the door open. Conversation stopped instantly. Ryan stood near the windows in a charcoal suit, Manhattan glowing 40 floors below him. Blake was beside the dining table, his expression changing so quickly that Evan almost missed the guilt. Carter closed a document on his laptop. "There you are," Ryan said in English. "We were wondering if the weather slowed you down." Evan smiled because he needed information more than confrontation. "Only about 10 minutes. Blake pulled out a chair for him. "You must be freezing." "I survived." Evan removed his coat and sat down. Dinner arrived minutes later, and the brothers returned to ordinary conversation with practiced ease. Carter discussed quarterly projections. Blake complained about an architect who had redesigned the same lobby 4 times. Ryan asked Evan about his consulting project and listened closely to the answer. Anyone watching them would have seen 4 men sharing dinner after a long workday. Evan saw every glance exchanged above the table. Halfway through the meal, Carter's phone vibrated. He checked it, then switched to Spanish. "The separation draft is ready." Blake immediately lowered his fork. Ryan glanced toward Evan before replying in Spanish. "Not here." Carter looked at the clock. "We have less than 4 hours." Evan took a slow sip of water. Separation draft. 4 hours. Whatever they were hiding had a deadline, and somehow he was at the center of it. Ryan turned back to him with the same composed expression he wore in boardrooms. "Everything okay?" Evan set down his glass. "Perfect." It was the first lie he had ever told all 3 of them at once, but not the last one he expected to tell that night. Because until Evan understood exactly what Ryan, Blake, and Carter planned to do before midnight, he was going to let them keep believing their safest language was one he could not understand. Evan kept his expression neutral while dinner continued, but every ordinary detail now felt staged. Ryan asked whether his redevelopment presentation had gone well. Blake offered him more bread. Carter checked his phone twice without explaining why. Evan answered naturally, forcing himself not to look toward the laptop sitting 3 feet from Carter's elbow. At 8:17, Ryan received a message. His eyes moved across the screen, and the warmth disappeared from his face. "Excuse us for a minute," he said in English. "Something came up with legal." Evan nodded. "Of course. The three brothers moved toward the windows, far enough away to create privacy but not far enough to escape Evan's hearing. Carter spoke first in Spanish. Sophia says Victor contacted another board member. Victor. Evan recognized the name immediately. Victor Hale had left Whitmore Holdings months earlier after a bitter disagreement over a redevelopment project. Evan had met him only twice. Does he have anything new? Blake asked. No, Carter replied. The same emails, the consulting records, and photographs from the foundation dinner. Evan's pulse quickened. He had attended that dinner with the brothers 6 weeks earlier. Ryan lowered his voice. What does Sophia recommend? No public response until legal sees exactly what Victor intends to release. But she wants us prepared. Blake looked toward the dining table. Prepared to do what? Pretend Evan is suddenly nobody to us. Temporarily, Carter said. Blake's expression hardened. That word does not make it better. Ryan remained quiet. Carter continued. The draft removes Evan from upcoming company appearances, executive travel, and the New Year's charity event. It also recommends that he stay away from the penthouse while this is active. Evan nearly forgot to breathe. The penthouse was not simply where Ryan, Blake, and Carter lived. Over the last 7 months, it had become part of Evan's life too. Books he had bought were on the shelves. A navy coat hung beside Ryan's in the entry closet. There was a coffee mug Blake had ordered because Evan once complained that every cup in the kitchen was too small. Now 3 people were discussing whether he could return there as if his place in their lives were a corporate privilege that could be suspended. Blake answered in Spanish. Absolutely not. It is a recommendation, Carter said. Then reject it. Ryan finally spoke. If photographers see Evan coming and going while Victor is claiming we gave his consulting firm special treatment, every picture becomes part of the story. Evan's thoughts sharpened. Special treatment. Consulting firm. Now the fragments were beginning to connect. Carter glanced at his phone again. Victor is threatening to provide documents to a reporter tomorrow morning unless the board opens an inquiry tonight. Then let the board investigate, Blake said. They should, Ryan replied. But Evan should not have to spend 3 weeks watching strangers turn his relationship into evidence. So we make the decision for him? Blake asked. Ryan looked toward Evan. Evan immediately lowered his eyes to his plate. If we tell him everything, Ryan said quietly, he will volunteer to step away because he will think it protects us. Blake did not deny it. Neither did Carter. Evan could not deny it either. Ryan knew him well enough to predict exactly what he might have done. That realization hurt almost as much as the secret itself. Then we do not give him that choice, Ryan continued. We create distance first. He blames us, not himself. Evan understood the plan now. They were not preparing to abandon him because he had become inconvenient. They were preparing to make him believe he had been abandoned so he would not sacrifice himself for them. The motive was love. The method still felt like betrayal. Carter returned to the table first. Sorry about that. Evan looked up at him calmly. Everything under control? Carter hesitated for half a second. Just business. Evan smiled. Good. Across the room, Blake looked away. Ryan did not. He watched Evan with an expression so protective that it suddenly felt unbearable. Evan had learned enough to know the brothers were afraid. What he still did not know was why Victor Hale believed a handful of emails could threaten 4 lives at once, or why Ryan seemed willing to let Evan hate him rather than explain the truth. Evan waited until dessert arrived before Victor Hale's accusation finally became clear. Carter's phone lit up again, and this time he carried the laptop to the far end of the dining room. Ryan and Blake followed him. Evan remained at the table, apparently interested in his coffee, while every word reached him across the quiet room. Sophia forwarded the documents Victor gave the board, Carter said in Spanish. He has emails from the Harbor Crest redevelopment project. Evan recognized the project immediately. His consulting firm had spent months studying how the development could affect small businesses and long-time residents. Evan had personally joined the project after the contract was awarded, but he had never participated in selecting his own firm. Blake leaned closer to the screen. Those are not complete. Victor does not need them to be complete, Carter replied. He needs them to look convincing for one news cycle. Ryan's expression tightened. Show me. Carter opened the first message. It was an email Ryan had sent praising Evan's research and requesting that the executive team consider several recommendations. Another showed Cole arranging a meeting around Evan's availability. A third referenced Evan attending a private strategy session. None sounded improper to Evan because he remembered the context surrounding each one. But placed beside photographs of him arriving at public events with the brothers, the messages could tell a very different story. He removed the dates, Blake said. Carter nodded. And several attachments. Then release the originals, Blake replied. We cannot release internal project records without legal review, Ryan said. And if we respond carelessly, Victor gets exactly what he wants. Evan stared into his coffee. Victor was not proving corruption. He was constructing an impression. The distinction mattered legally, but Evan knew it might matter far less online. Carter scrolled farther. Victor's message says the board has until midnight to announce an inquiry. Otherwise, he sends everything to the reporter at 9 tomorrow morning. Blake looked toward Evan again. Then tell him. Ryan shook his head. Not until we know what the board is doing. You keep saying that as if ignorance protects him. For tonight, it might. Blake lowered his voice. And tomorrow, when he discovers we signed a statement distancing ourselves from him? Ryan was silent. Carter answered instead. The statement does not accuse Evan of anything. It says that while the allegations are reviewed, he will not participate in Whitmore Holdings events and that personal arrangements will remain private. Blake gave him an incredulous look. Everyone will know what that means. Ryan turned toward the windows. That is the point. Evan felt the meaning land harder than he expected. Ryan wanted the public to believe there was distance between them because distance would make Evan less useful as a target. He will think we chose the company over him, Blake said. Ryan answered without turning around. Then let him. Ryan. If Evan knows we are risking the company because of his relationship with us, he will leave first. You know he will. Blake said nothing. Ryan finally faced his brothers. I would rather have him furious with me in a safe apartment than standing beside us while strangers tear apart his career. Carter closed the laptop halfway. And if he never forgives us? Something in Ryan's expression changed. For the first time that evening, Evan did not see a chief executive managing a crisis. He saw a man terrified of losing someone and choosing the worst possible way to prevent it. Then that is the price, Ryan said. Evan lowered his eyes before any of them could notice his reaction. The secret was crueler now because he understood the intention behind it. They were not rejecting him. They were planning to make him feel rejected. They believed heartbreak was safer than giving him the truth and allowing him to choose. Carter reopened the laptop. Sophia needs authorization before 11:30 if we want the statement ready by midnight. Ryan looked at the clock. Prepare it. Blake stared at him. I still say this is wrong. So do I, Ryan replied. But I am doing it anyway. Evan slowly set his coffee cup down. He had listened long enough. If Ryan signed that statement, the lie would stop being a plan and become something the entire world could see. Evan looked toward the three brothers and realized there was only one way left to stop them without pretending anymore. Evan rose from the table just as Carter placed his hand on the laptop. Do not authorize it. Carter froze. Ryan turned from the windows. Blake stared at Evan as if he had heard the wrong voice. Evan met Ryan's eyes and continued in fluent Spanish. Do not send a statement about my life before asking whether I agree with it. For several seconds, nobody moved. The city lights beyond the glass seemed brighter against the silence. Carter slowly removed his hand from the keyboard. Blake was the first to speak. You understand Spanish? Evan answered in English. Every word. Ryan's composure disappeared. Since when? Since long before I met you. Carter looked genuinely stunned. Why did you never tell us? Evan almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about the question. Why did I need to? You three decided I could not understand, and apparently that assumption became convenient. Ryan stepped closer, then stopped when Evan's expression warned him not to turn this into another decision made on instinct. Evan, we were trying to protect you. I know. That answer surprised all three brothers. Evan looked at Blake. I heard you say the statement was wrong. Then Carter. I heard you explain the legal exposure and the photographs. Finally Ryan. And I heard you say you would rather let me hate you than give me the choice to stand beside you. Ryan lowered his eyes. Evan continued, his voice controlled. You were willing to make me believe I had been pushed out of your lives because you thought heartbreak would be easier for me than the truth. Not easier, Ryan said quietly. Safer. You do not get to define safe for me without me. Blake closed his eyes briefly. Carter looked toward the laptop. He is right. Ryan said nothing. Evan walked to the table and turned the computer toward himself. Show me everything Victor sent. Carter hesitated. Some of these are internal records. Evan looked at him. Carter immediately opened the folder. The Harbor Crest emails appeared first. Evan recognized the messages, but now he could see what Victor had omitted. Dates were missing from screenshots. Attachments containing research summaries had been removed. One scheduling email made it appear that Carter had changed an executive meeting solely for Evan, although Evan remembered several consultants being unavailable that afternoon. Where are the originals? Evan asked. Archived, Carter replied. Sophia has requested them. Then nobody responds publicly until we compare every excerpt with the complete record. Ryan finally spoke. That is what I wanted to do. Evan looked at him. No. You wanted to investigate the records while making me disappear. Ryan accepted the correction without argument. Blake moved beside Evan. There is something else you should see. Ryan immediately looked at him. Blake. No more secrets. Blake opened another folder on the laptop. Evan expected another email. Instead, he saw 3 documents carrying the brothers' names. Each was addressed to the board of Whitmore Holdings. Evan read the first lines twice before understanding them. They were prepared letters offering to relinquish executive authority if the board demanded that the brothers publicly deny their relationship with Evan or treat him as responsible for the Harbor Crest controversy. None had been signed. Evan looked from one brother to the next. You were going to step down. Carter answered carefully. Only if the board forced the choice. And you were not going to tell me that either. Ryan's silence was answer enough. Evan felt his anger change shape. The 3 men had prepared to remove him from their public lives, risk the company they had built, and surrender their own authority, all while keeping him ignorant because they believed sacrifice was something love permitted them to arrange in secret. Evan closed the folder. No statement. No resignations. Nothing gets signed tonight. Ryan watched him. Evan, if Victor goes public tomorrow. Then tomorrow we deal with Victor. Evan held his gaze. Together. But tonight, you are going to learn something you should have understood before you ever started speaking Spanish around me. Ryan waited. Evan switched back to Spanish. I am not the person you protect by taking away his voice. Ryan remained silent after Evan's final words, and for once, silence was exactly what Evan needed from him. Blake pulled out a chair, but Evan stayed standing. Carter closed the separation draft without saving any changes. "The authorization is stopped," he said. "Good." Evan looked at the 3 unsigned letters again. "Now explain these." Ryan answered first. "The board has not asked us to step down." "That is not what I asked." Ryan nodded, accepting the correction. Victor's message implied that if the inquiry became public, several directors might pressure us to choose between maintaining executive credibility and acknowledging our relationship with you. We prepared for that possibility. Evan looked toward Blake. "All 3 of you agreed to this?" Blake hesitated. "Eventually." Carter added, "The letters were contingencies. They were never submitted." Evan returned his attention to the screen. The separation statement was supposed to create distance so the public would stop looking at him. The resignation letters were supposed to protect him if that distance failed. Every solution required someone to disappear. "You planned every sacrifice except the obvious one," Evan said. Ryan frowned. "Which one?" "Trust." Nobody answered. Evan opened the Harbor Crest folder again. "Victor has screenshots without dates. Emails without attachments. Photographs without context. That does not prove his accusation. It proves he knows how to make ordinary facts look suspicious." Carter nodded slowly. "That is our assessment too. Then why give him something better?" Evan pointed toward the separation draft. "If this becomes public tomorrow and your immediate response is to remove me from events, travel, and the penthouse, what do people assume?" Blake understood first. "That we found something." "Exactly." Carter leaned toward the laptop. "Or that counsel advised distance because of a conflict. Which still makes Victor's version look more credible," Evan replied. Ryan studied him. "What are you proposing? Tonight?" "Nothing." Ryan looked surprised. Evan continued, "Preserve everything. Do not contact Victor. Do not issue the statement. Do not sign those letters. Tomorrow morning, I want to see the complete Harbor Crest procurement timeline with Sophia." Carter checked the clock. "Victor's deadline is midnight." "That is his deadline, not ours." Blake almost smiled. "I wish I had said that 2 hours ago." Evan looked at him. "You said enough to know this was wrong. You just did not stop it." Blake's smile disappeared. "You are right." Evan turned to Carter. "You reduced the problem to exposure, optics, and variables. Somewhere in that calculation, I became another variable." Carter lowered his gaze. "You are right too." Finally, Evan faced Ryan. "And you knew me well enough to predict that I might leave to protect you, so you decided to take away the opportunity." Ryan's voice was quiet. "Yes. That is the part one cannot ignore." "I know." Evan studied him, surprised by the absence of excuses. Ryan continued, "I thought if you were angry with us, you would stay away long enough for us to contain the damage. I convinced myself that temporary pain was acceptable if it kept your career intact. You cannot call pain temporary when you are choosing it for someone else." Ryan nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Evan asked. "Because protecting me is not the problem. Loving me is not the problem. The problem is believing either one gives you authority over my choices." Ryan held his gaze. "Then tell me what you need." The question changed something. It did not repair the night, but it was the first time Ryan had asked instead of decided. Evan picked up his coat. "Space until morning." Ryan immediately nodded. Blake asked, "Are you going back to your apartment?" Evan paused. He still kept a small apartment across town for work nights, although he spent most evenings at the penthouse. "Yes." Carter stood. I can arrange a car. I will get one myself. Carter sat back down without arguing. Evan slipped on his coat. At the doorway, he looked at the three brothers one last time. At 7:30 tomorrow morning, I meet Sophia. I want every original email, every procurement approval, every selection record, and every board message connected to Harbor Crest. Carter nodded. You will have them. Evan looked at Blake. No statement. No statement. Then Ryan. No resignations. Ryan glanced toward the unsigned letters. No resignations. Evan opened the door. And if the board decides my name belongs in this inquiry, nobody speaks for me. Ryan's expression tightened with worry, but he did not challenge him. Understood. Evan stepped into the hallway and walked toward the elevators alone. He was still angry. He was still hurt. Yet underneath both feelings was something steadier. The three most powerful men in his life had spent the evening trying to protect him by removing his choices. Tomorrow morning, Evan intended to show them that the strongest person in the room did not have to be the one with the biggest company, the highest title, or the most carefully prepared sacrifice. Evan arrived at Whitmore Holdings at 7:28 the next morning carrying a coffee, a notebook, and barely 4 hours of sleep. Sofia Ramirez was already waiting inside a private conference room with several folders arranged across the table. She looked at him carefully. Ryan told me you wanted the complete Harbor Crest record. Evan placed his coat over a chair. Not Ryan's summary. Not Victor's screenshots. Everything. Sophia nodded. Then we start with the procurement timeline. She opened the first folder. Harbor Crest had begun accepting consulting proposals in February. Evan's firm submitted its proposal on February 12. An outside planning partner completed its evaluation on March 3, and the selection committee approved Evan's firm on March 7. Sophia placed another record beside it. Your personal assignment to Harbor Crest was March 21. Evan stared at the dates. 14 days later. Correct. So when the contract was approved, nobody knew I would be assigned to it. According to the records I reviewed, that is correct. Evan opened Victor's screenshots beside the originals. The difference became obvious almost immediately. Ryan's email praising Evan's research had been written after Evan circulated a 40-page analysis to 12 executives and outside consultants. Carter's message about changing a meeting time appeared personal in Victor's version, but the complete calendar showed 5 people had scheduling conflicts. Another message describing Evan's presence at a private strategy meeting omitted the attached attendee list showing that 9 consultants had been invited. Evan leaned back. Victor did not invent anything. No, Sophia said. That is what makes this complicated. He removed context. Exactly. Evan tapped the separation statement. And if this had been released last night, it would have given his story emotional credibility. Even if the records did not give it factual credibility. Sophia studied him. That was one of my concerns. Evan opened his notebook. Then we do the opposite. Preserve every record. Bring in an independent reviewer. Ryan, Blake, and Carter formally recuse themselves from any decision involving my firm until the review is complete. My firm cooperates fully. If the company makes a public statement, it confirms the review without implying anyone is guilty. Sophia's expression shifted from caution to interest. That is defensible. And nobody pretends my relationship ended because Victor wants a headline. That is also defensible. Her phone vibrated. She read the message and frowned. Victor contacted the reporter early. Evan checked the wall clock. 7:56. How early? 7:52. The reporter has requested comment before publication. Evan closed his notebook. Can the board meet this morning? Several directors are already in the building because of Victor's message last night. Then give them the complete timeline before anyone reacts to the incomplete one. Sophia reached for her phone, but the conference room door opened before she could make the call. Ryan entered first, followed by Blake and Carter. All three looked as though they had slept even less than Evan. Carter carried a laptop. Blake held 3 coffees. Ryan carried the original archive folders Evan had requested. Nobody spoke until Ryan placed them on the table. Everything you asked for. Evan nodded. Good. Carter looked at the dates spread across the table. You found the gap. 14 days between contract approval and my assignment. Blake exhaled. Then Victor's accusation falls apart. Not automatically, Evan said. People can still question the relationship. We should not build our response around calling Victor a liar. We build it around making the complete process visible. Ryan looked at the notebook. What are you proposing? Evan turned it toward them. Independent review. Full preservation of records. Formal recusal for all 3 of you on anything involving my firm until the review ends. My firm cooperates with every reasonable request. No separation. Statement. No resignation letters. No personal attack on Victor. Carter read the notes carefully. It is cleaner than our plan. Your plan was designed around controlling appearances, Evan said. Mine is designed around surviving scrutiny. Blake nodded first. I agree. Carter followed. Ryan remained quiet for several seconds. Evan waited. Last night, Ryan would have taken the notebook and started issuing instructions. This morning, he asked, what do you need from us? Evan felt the significance of those words immediately. I need you to support the review without controlling it. I need all 3 of you to accept recusal. And if my name comes up before the board, I speak for myself. Ryan nodded. Agreed. Sophia checked her phone again. The board chair can convene an emergency session at 8:15. Carter looked at the clock. They had less than 15 minutes. Ryan reached automatically for the folders in front of Evan, then stopped. Do you want help carrying those? Evan handed him half. Yes. It was a small exchange, but it felt larger than anything Ryan had promised the night before. When Sophia opened the conference room door, Evan walked out first. Ryan, Blake, and Carter followed beside him rather than ahead of him. Somewhere outside the building, Victor Hale was already trying to shape the story. Inside Whitmore Holdings, Evan was finally walking toward a room where nobody would be allowed to shape his part of it without hearing his voice. The boardroom doors closed at 8:15, leaving Evan seated at the long walnut table with Ryan, Blake, Carter, Sophia, and 7 directors who had been called in before most of Manhattan finished its first cup of coffee. The board chair, Margaret Ellis, opened the meeting without ceremony. We have received allegations concerning Harbor Crest, along with selected internal communications. Before this becomes a public issue, I want facts. Carter shifted slightly, but Evan noticed him stop himself from reaching for the laptop. Sophia distributed the complete procurement timeline. Margaret studied the first page. The consulting firm was approved March 7th. Yes, Sophia said. And Mr. Brooks was assigned March 21st. One director looked toward Ryan. Then explain why the material we received suggests Mr. Brooks influenced the selection. Ryan began, the material was presented without. He stopped. Evan saw the instinct arrive and disappear across Ryan's face. Ryan turned toward him. Evan should answer that. The room became quiet. It was a small sentence, but Evan understood exactly what it cost Ryan to surrender control when every instinct told him to protect. Evan opened the original records. My firm submitted its proposal on February 12th. The evaluation was completed before I had any personal involvement with Harbor Crest. I did not participate in the selection committee, and I did not know I would be assigned to the project until 14 days after approval. He placed Victor's screenshots beside the original emails. The messages provided to you are real. The problem is what was removed. Margaret compared the documents. Evan continued. This email appears to show Ryan praising my work while my firm was being considered. The complete record shows it was sent weeks after selection, following a 40-page analysis distributed to 12 people. This scheduling message appears to show Carter rearranging an executive meeting for me. The calendar shows 5 attendees had conflicts. This private strategy meeting appears exclusive until you open the attachment and see 9 consultants listed. Another director leaned forward. Are you accusing Victor Hale of falsifying documents? No, Evan said. I am telling you what the complete documents show. An independent reviewer can decide whether the omissions were misleading. Sophia glanced toward him approvingly. Margaret turned to the brothers. And your proposed response? Ryan looked at Evan before answering. Our original response was wrong. Blake added, we considered creating public distance between ourselves and Evan while the allegations were reviewed. A director frowned. Why? Carter answered this time. We believed it would reduce scrutiny around him. In retrospect, it could have created the appearance that we believed the allegations had merit. There is another issue, Evan said. Ryan looked at him, but did not interrupt. Evan continued. Their plan also made a decision about my personal and professional life without involving me. I objected to it, and they withdrew it. Margaret studied all 4 men. Then what are you asking this board to approve? Evan slid his written proposal forward. An independent review of Harbor Crest procurement and all relevant communications. Preservation of the complete records. Formal recusal of Ryan, Blake, and Carter from decisions involving my consulting firm until the review is complete. My firm will cooperate fully. If Whitmore Holdings issues a statement, it should confirm the review and nothing more. One director asked, and what happens if the press asks whether your personal relationship influenced company decisions? Evan held his gaze. We tell the truth. The relationship exists. The records also exist. One does not erase the other. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Margaret finally looked toward the triplets. You agree to recusal? Yes, Ryan said. Completely, Blake added. Carter nodded. Effective immediately. Margaret turned to Sophia. Can an outside firm begin today? I already have 3 independent candidates prepared. Margaret almost smiled. Of course you do. The tension eased slightly, but Evan knew the hardest part was not over. The board voted. 7 hands rose in favor of the independent review. None opposed. Sophia's phone vibrated seconds later. She checked the screen. The reporter has delayed publication after receiving confirmation that an independent review is beginning. Blake exhaled. Carter leaned back for the first time all morning. Ryan looked at Evan, relief visible but restrained. Margaret gathered the documents. Then we let the review establish the facts. As the directors began leaving, Ryan approached Evan but stopped several feet away. You handled that better than I would have. Evan looked at him. That is because you would have tried to control the room. Ryan gave a faint, rueful smile. Probably. And me. The smile vanished. Yes. Blake and Carter joined them. Evan looked at all 3. Last night you thought protecting me meant deciding what I could handle. This morning you did something harder. Carter asked, what? You let me handle it. Ryan nodded slowly. I am learning. Before Evan could answer, Sophia called his name from across the room. She was staring at a newly arrived document on her tablet. There is something else. Evan walked toward her. What happened? Sophia enlarged an approval record from the Harbor Crest archive. The independent intake team just flagged this. One approval entry does not match the version in our original file. Ryan's expression sharpened. What does that mean? Sophia looked from him to Evan. I do not know yet. Evan stared at the two records. They carried the same project name and the same approval date, but one authorization number was different. Victor's story had just lost much of its power, yet a new question had appeared inside the company's own files, and this time nobody in the room knew who had created it. Sophia did not speculate. She forwarded both approval records to the independent review team and asked everyone else to leave the documents untouched. By noon, the outside firm had accepted the engagement, and for the next 3 weeks, Harbor Crest became a test of patience rather than power. Evan returned to his consulting work. Ryan, Blake, and Carter honored their recusal. They received procedural updates through Sophia, but none of them contacted reviewers privately, requested special access, or tried to influence Evan's cooperation. The change was hardest for Ryan. Evan could see it every time a new question arrived and Ryan deliberately refused to answer it for him. The mismatched authorization number remained the largest uncertainty. One version appeared in the original project file, while another had entered the accounting archives several days later. Victor had included only the second version in the material he circulated, making the discrepancy look suspicious. Evan refused to guess what it meant. 3 weeks after the emergency board meeting, Sophia called all 4 men back to the same conference room. An independent review report rested on the table. Evan sat beside Ryan, with Blake and Carter across from them. Sophia began with the question that had followed them since the board meeting. The authorization numbers are different because the project was assigned a corrected billing code after approval. Accounting generated a replacement reference number. The underlying approval did not change. Carter leaned forward. Who requested the correction? Finance operations. It was routine, documented, and unrelated to Evan or his firm. Evan felt the tension in his shoulders ease. Sophia continued. The reviewers confirmed that Evan's firm was evaluated and selected through the standard process on March 7. Evan was assigned to Harbor Crest on March 21. They found no evidence that Ryan, Blake, or Carter influenced the selection. Blake released a breath. Ryan remained still. And Victor's emails, he asked. Authentic but incomplete, Sophia replied. The review found that several excerpts omitted information necessary to understand their context. The outside firm is not making conclusions about Victor's motives. Its conclusion concerns the procurement process, and that process was properly documented. Evan appreciated the distinction. Facts did not need dramatic language to be powerful. Carter looked toward him. Your plan worked. Evan shook his head. The records worked. The plan just gave them room to speak. Sophia closed the report. The board will accept the findings this afternoon. The company can issue a factual statement afterward. Ryan looked at Evan before speaking. Do you want to review it before publication? 3 weeks earlier, Ryan would have asked legal to draft something and informed Evan afterward. Evan noticed the difference. Yes. Then nothing goes out until you have seen it. Later that afternoon, the board formally accepted the independent findings. The statement was brief. It confirmed the review, summarized the procurement timeline, and stated that no improper influence had been identified. It did not attack Victor. It did not discuss Evan's private life. It did not pretend the brothers had separated from him. By 6 o'clock, Evan stood near the conference room windows watching the Manhattan traffic move below. Blake and Carter had gone downstairs to meet Sophia. Ryan remained several feet away. There is something I owe you, Ryan said. Evan turned. An apology? More than one. Evan waited. Ryan looked toward the city. I thought leadership meant seeing the danger first and absorbing it before anyone else had to. Somewhere along the way, I started treating love the same way. Evan listened. When Victor appeared, I did not ask what you wanted because I was afraid your answer would be to sacrifice yourself for us. So I chose a sacrifice for you instead. And convinced yourself it was different. Yes. Ryan looked back at him. It was not. Evan appreciated that Ryan did not ask for immediate forgiveness. I was angry because the plan was cruel, Evan said. But I was more angry because you knew exactly who I was and still decided I could not be trusted with my own choice. I know. Trust cannot mean you believe in me only when there is nothing at risk. Ryan nodded. Then I have work to do. Evan studied him for a moment. All three of you do. We know. Blake and Carter returned carrying the final statement. Carter handed it directly to Evan rather than Ryan. Your review first. Evan read every line. Nothing implied distance. Nothing reduced him to a liability. Nothing tried to rewrite their relationship for public convenience. He handed it back. I approve. Carter sent it to Sophia. Blake looked between Evan and Ryan. So what happens now? Evan considered the question. 3 weeks ago, the brothers had written an answer without asking him. Now all three waited. Now we go home, Evan said. Ryan's expression softened, but he still did not move until Evan picked up his coat. The four men left together. As the elevator descended, Carter's phone sounded with a final message from Sophia. He read it and smiled. The board approved the statement unanimously. Blake leaned against the wall. That might be the first uncomplicated sentence I have heard all month. Evan smiled despite himself. Ryan looked at him but said nothing. The elevator doors opened into the lobby, and Evan realized the real victory was not that the investigation had cleared them. It was that when uncertainty had returned, the three men who once believed love gave them permission to decide for him had finally learned to stand beside him and wait for his answer. By the time Evan returned to the penthouse that evening, the place looked exactly as it had before the crisis and completely different to him. His navy coat still had its place in the entry closet. His books still filled part of the living room shelves. The coffee mug Blake had ordered for him sat beside the machine in the kitchen. Nothing had disappeared because nothing had ever needed to. Blake was standing at the stove making pasta, Carter was setting 4 glasses on the kitchen island, and Ryan was opening a bottle of sparkling water. No laptops were open. No legal documents covered the counters. For the first time in weeks, nobody appeared to be waiting for a phone to ring. Blake glanced over his shoulder. I should warn you that dinner is either going to be excellent or memorable for the wrong reason. Evan removed his coat. Those are not reassuring options. Carter smiled. I suggested ordering dinner. You always suggest ordering dinner, Blake replied. Evan sat at the island and watched them argue over sauce for another minute. The ordinary conversation felt almost strange after weeks of deadlines, board meetings, and carefully reviewed statements. Ryan placed a glass in front of Evan. Sophia sent one final update. The board closed the internal matter after accepting the outside review. Evan nodded. Good. Ryan did not add anything else. He did not explain what the decision meant for Evan or announce what would happen next. He simply let the information belong to everyone at the table. Carter opened a cabinet and asked Blake something in Spanish about where he had put the larger serving bowl. Blake answered automatically. Ryan added a comment about the bowl being in the dishwasher. Then all three brothers stopped at almost the same moment. Carter slowly looked toward Evan. Sorry. Evan raised an eyebrow. For asking about a bowl. For switching languages without thinking. There was something almost absurd about the concern on Carter's face. 3 weeks earlier, Spanish had been the wall they built around decisions they believed Evan should not hear. Now Carter looked afraid that even an ordinary sentence might rebuild it. Evan answered him in Spanish. The bowl is in the cabinet beside the refrigerator. Blake stared at him for half a second before laughing. I am never going to get used to this. Evan switched back to English. You probably should. Ryan smiled, but Evan noticed the emotion behind it. Your grandmother taught you? Mostly. She believed every child in the family should be able to understand exactly when she was complaining about them. Carter laughed. That explains your vocabulary. The conversation continued, moving naturally between English and Spanish until the language no longer felt like a secret code. Later, when dinner was finished and the dishes had been cleared, Ryan remained beside the island while Blake and Carter carried plates into the kitchen. Can I tell you something? Ryan asked. Evan looked at him. The question itself mattered. Yes. Ryan rested his hands against the edge of the counter. The night this started, I thought protecting you meant putting myself between you and whatever was coming. I did not understand that I was also putting myself between you and your own decisions. Evan nodded. You understand now? I understand enough to know I might make that mistake again if I stop paying attention. Evan appreciated the answer more than a promise of perfection. Ryan continued, so I want a rule. You want a rule. One you get to approve. Evan smiled slightly. That is progress. Blake and Carter returned just in time to hear Ryan say, nothing about any of us without all of us. Carter considered it. Meaning no private plans involving someone who is not in the room. No strategic sacrifices, Blake added. Evan looked at him. Especially no strategic sacrifices. Ryan waited. What do you think? Evan glanced around the kitchen. 3 weeks earlier, these men had been willing to lose their positions, damage their reputations, and deliberately break his heart because they thought love meant carrying every danger alone. They had not become different people overnight. Ryan still wanted to solve problems before anyone else saw them. Carter still trusted logic when emotions became complicated. Blake still recognized trouble before he found the courage to challenge it. But now they knew those instincts could not outrank another person's voice. I think, Evan said, that if a decision affects all 4 of us, there should be 4 voices. Ryan nodded. 4 voices. Carter raised his glass. That seems difficult for 3 chief executive officers. Evan picked up his own glass. Consider it professional development. Blake laughed, and even Ryan could not hide his smile. Outside the windows, Manhattan stretched beneath a clear winter sky, thousands of lights reflecting against the glass. Carter said something playful in Spanish. This time nobody stopped him. Blake answered. Ryan shook his head. Evan listened for a moment before replying in the same language, and the 3 brothers looked toward him with familiar surprise. Evan smiled. The language had not changed. What it meant between them had. Once, Spanish had been where 3 men hid a decision from the person they loved. Now there was no language in that home where Evan's voice did not belong.